Welcome to Out with Dan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello and welcome back to Out with Dan. I have waited 1 year to be able to say, May Cobb, welcome back.
Thank you, Dan. I'm so happy and honored to be back.
Oh, thank you. We're going to chat about your new book, The Hollywood Assistant. But just before we get started on that, you've been a very busy person. So can you tell the audience about The Hunting Wives and what's going on with that? That's a former book of yours.
Yeah, so the very exciting news is The Hunting Wives is being made into an 8-episode series for Starz. And it's got an incredible cast: Brittany Snow, Malin Ackerman, and Dermot Mulroney, Chrissy Metz. It just goes on and on. Katie Lowe's.
That's so wonderful.
Thank you.
And you were actually on set for some, and I saw on the IMDb credits that it says inspired by your work, and you also get some writing credits as well. How exciting was that?
It's amazing. So my writing credit is really just that it's based on the novel. I wasn't, on as writer, but I am on as executive producer, which has been, so surreal and amazing. And the showrunner, head writer, a woman named Rebecca Cutter, who has a fantastic show called Hightown, has been so inclusive and welcoming and made me part of the process. So it's been very just gratifying. And it's been
cool. I am so excited to watch it because I've enjoyed reading your book. So I know this is going to be fantastic. So congratulations again.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much.
So now let's talk about The Hollywood Assistant. This is now I want to make a little bit of fun of you because I believe you were a Hollywood assistant in the past. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. About 20 years ago.
So how surreal was it revisiting that type of a setting?
It was really like, it was such a nice thing I wrote it in summer. I started to write it in the summer here in Austin, which is hell.
Yeah. Yes.
I was so happy to escape back to LA, where I lived 20 years ago. And, it's just like June gloom and how you can still need a hoodie. And I'm wearing this hoodie today just because I have my AC blowing. Like it's just disgusting outside. So, and I, unlike Cassidy in the book, my bosses were the dreamiest people to work for. So it was cool. I just went and spent a couple of days with them, and I haven't seen them in about 20 years, even though we've stayed in touch. Yeah, we've stayed in touch, but they had kids. I have a kid, COVID, the whole thing. And so it was so fabulous to get to be back with them. And
So now's the time. Give us an overview about what The Hollywood Assistant is before we get into picking it apart a little bit.
Yeah. So The Hollywood Assistant follows the protagonist, Cassidy Foster, who's a fledgling novelist, recently heartbroken, living in Austin, Texas, when her best friend, who's well-connected producer in LA, says, "Girl, move out here and I'll get you a job." Cassidy is soon working for a power couple in Hollywood and gets sort of swept up into their life, and things aren't what they seem. And then there's a murder. So that's
well, and there's some themes that sort of have recurred. You always write the best girlfriend characters. So this is another sort of girlfriend novel. And just in saying girlfriend, besties and people that have had long connections. And I'd like you, if you will, speak a little bit about secrets and how they work into your writing. That's something that you visited before. How fun is that to write?
Oh, Dan, it's the most fun. I love secrets and backstabbing and And I don't know why. I feel like I'm a nice person, but maybe I'm not.
You know, when I speak to suspense authors or authors who have a lot of serial killing in a book, I'm like, how is it you seem and appear so nice, but yet you can go so deep into the psyche of it? And it's just simply talent. That's what it is. So
I hope so.
well, I think so. At least in my sense, it certainly is with you. So I enjoy it so much. And let's talk a little bit about gaslighting.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's, you know, I think that's something we all experience at some point in our life in a relationship, whether it's a friend or work relationship, and how that seemingly, so you have more than one character in this book that gaslights. And we won't get into any details because it would give too much away, but it's gaslighting can so often be just something that seems so surface and so easygoing, and yet it can be so diabolical in the end.
I had not thought about this with this book about the gaslighting. Like I
Oh,
had. So wow. Yeah, it's in there. I think you're right. It can be so diabolical and so insidious almost because
yes.
it's really hard. One thing with this book I was trying to set out to do was like sort of that like noir, almost body double, like different shades of reality fiction blurring with, and so it's like with this book, I wanted the reader to be asking like who's zooming who, like,
Oh, that's right. Well, and it's true, and so one of the things about Cassidy is she has had her heart broken in the past, and she has some baggage that we see over a very long arc that this baggage gets unloaded, and it's so well done. But, Cassidy I think even Cassidy's honesty with herself is a part of an arc. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I love that. That's so brilliant. I'm so glad that we're talking about this before I go on tour.
Oh, yay!
I'm gonna sound so smart.
You're kind, thank you. But so with Cassidy, she makes some decisions that her character says, I know this is a questionable decision, but I'm willingly making it. And I find that is a human nature that is, I think it's true of a lot more people than we might admit to ourselves. We look at a situation and we say, what is the payoff at the end? Mm-hmm. And Cassidy she has her eye on the payoff. And I think, don't we all, when it comes to things like work and stuff, we work really hard to get that promotion or to get ahead in our career. I think we do the same thing in our private lives as well.
Yeah. 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 And that sort of for Cassidy. So for this book in general, when I started it, I really didn't know who the villain was. And so some of this organically kind of led to like her own, her arc of her own, stuff revealing itself was just my act of discovery as the writer of,
wow.
Yeah, what is really going on with each of these people.
Well, and it's fun to watch those onion layers be peeled back and we see the reveal, because it's like, and you give us a lot of sexiness as well, which is always something fun. That point where Cassidy's in the swimming pool floating on her back. I mean, I was like, oh, hello, that's nice. It was recognizable,
Thank you. I really love well done steam, and I'm not saying I do it well, but this book in particular was like my love letter to erotic thrillers of the late 80s and 90s, like Fatal Attraction, Unfaithful. Yes. I love that stuff. I love because sex is power, and just as powerful as death and money. And so yeah. I'm fascinated by it and how it drives people and motivates people and gives people blind spots. And
I'm sort of laughing because yes, sex is power, and it can be one of two ways. It can be really great sex or really bad sex. The middle of the road sex is boring, but one end of the spectrum or the other is certainly power.
Yeah, it is. No, it is. It is for sure.
Oh my goodness. So do you think this and I'm sort of joking here. Do you think the Hollywood assistant sort of might block your next movie roles? Do you think you might have hit a little too home to some people, maybe?
I think it's quite possible. I think it's possible. I'm so interested to see what will happen on that front, because that would be such a dream, but I know better than to hold my breath.
Well, yeah, no breath holding, that's for sure. Well, and I think there are instances in this book that were foreshadowed by the Me Too movement as well. I mean, I think that, to be honest, Hollywood is a reflection of the rest of the world. Yep. We just happen to reflect it really nicely here in Hollywood because it's on television, it's on the movies, it's on the news. Hollywood doesn't get away from anything, and we often don't shine a light on ourselves. But when we do, as in this book, we see exactly the underbelly of the world.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so well put too. But it is true. I don't even have anything intelligent to say to that because that's so perfectly said.
Well, thank you. I do think, it's power and money and looks. And let's also be clear that, here in Hollywood, if you aren't beautiful, makeup can make you beautiful and the right lighting can make you beautiful. And we see the world very differently. I know there's a place where Cassidy is sort of checking herself out in the mirror, and her character asks, "Do men do that?" And this one does. I think all humans do. I think we look at ourselves in the reflection of the toaster because we want to remind ourselves of who we are, or at least that's what I do anyway. Do you do that, May?
Oh, of course. Yes, absolutely. I love it. In the toaster, that's brilliant. That's a very flattering thing too, because it's like the chrome and it's not as
yes. Well, so in a book I read recently, there was a character that always observes themselves in a hubcap because it is slightly rounded and it gives them a better view of themselves. And I was like, well, that's darn brilliant, right? Of course, hubcaps don't do those things anymore. That was a historical book.
I love that though. That's so cool.
So in writing this, did what I'm going to call the double ending, did that come organically or was that planned at any point?
Yeah, so that's such a great question. So for this book, sometimes I do know who the villain is and why. For this one, I did not. But it was getting to the point, I was about 20,000 words in, where I was like, oh, I need to figure this out. And so, and by figure it out, please God, let this come to me.
I don't believe you, May, but I will take your word right now, but I don't believe you. So I think yours must always come to you. Your writing is so good.
Oh, thank you. So that is very kind. I so appreciate it. This one I was sweating. It felt like the 11th hour, even though I was still, just a fifth of the way in. But the very final reveal that came to me as it happens, maybe the night before I wrote it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I did like that. It's fair to say that you don't pull any punches with us, that you show us the characters and we see different layers of the characters as they evolve in the book. As we evolve with these characters, we see those. But I did really, really love what I call the double ending, because it shows something that when I got to that, I really began to look back at so many other characters who had sort of done the same thing. I mean, you've given us a book full of people who, a lot of them make the exact same decisions. They just come out with different outcomes.
Yeah, that's true. Oh my gosh. I hadn't thought about that either.
Then I'm going on tour with you, May. Come on, let's go.
Would you please? Oh my God, that'd be amazing.
Oh, I would love it. So speaking of tour, you have, how many cities are you going to be touring in? Do you remember?
7. Yes. Starting in Austin, then Houston. Then I'm coming out for the first time to LA. And I'm so excited about that. Should I say the dates?
Sure. Absolutely.
For Los Angeles, I will be at Zibby's Bookshop on July 11th with Eliza Jane Brazier, and then Saturday, July 13th at the Grove with Josh Sabera. And I'm so excited about both those. And I'll also be launching in Austin. And I think I already said that. But anyway, I have a whole, if you go to Instagram, it's got my tour card and
lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely. Speaking of which, do you have a website or social media you'd like to share with us?
Yeah. My website is www.maycobb.com. Very easy to remember. And Instagram, I'm May_Cobb. Yeah. And those Instagram is where I'm most active, I would say.
Fantastic. Well, I told May before we started recording that I'll definitely see her at Zibby's in Santa Monica and hopefully at the Grove as well. So if any of the audience is here in LA, y'all, let's get together and go see May. It's a lot of fun.
That would be amazing.
I agree. Again, the book is called The Hollywood Assistant. May, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at OutWithDan.com, on Twitter at OutWithDan, and on Instagram and Facebook at GoOutWithDan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.